Listed on this card is all the foods that I have removed from my life in order to increase focus, clarity, and be free of brain fog. And a lot of people ask me about this list all the time. Hardly a week goes past when I'm not asked about it, so that people also can start improving their focus, their concentration, and their memory through diet optimization. In this video, I'm going to talk about exactly what's on this list, but I'm going to do something even more important and empowering than that, and I'm going to tell you how you can make this list for yourself and get it right very, very quickly and get on track with your health optimization through a proper memory diet, a memory diet you might just call magnetic. Hi there, this is Anthony Metivier from magneticmemorymethod.com. We serve mature learners who are open and interested in taking mental adventures that unlock the full powers of your mind so you can learn and remember quickly what it is that's going to improve your life, whether it's a language that's been on your bucket list that you really just wish you could speak, whether it's mathematical formulas so you can pass exams at school, whatever it may be that you need, complex information. Information is getting so much more complicated all the time, and the rate of information is speeding up, and we help people deal with that at magneticmemorymethod.com. Now, if you're new here, we got about 16,000 people in our community, so hit the thumbs up, get subscribed to this channel, and click that little bell icon, because we do live stream sessions where you can get in touch directly with me to ask questions with the community there. And you know what? They have great answers too. So it's not just about me. This is about a movement of preserving the human brain and making sure that your brain health lasts for life, so that your memory lasts for life, and that you remember all the information that you need on the spot. We often think of things in terms of the samurai who is prepared to execute one last move, even with his head cut off. That's how we want our memory to be. We never want our head cut off, of course, but we want to be sharp, laser fast, quick on our feet, and able to remember the information that matters when we need it. And so a huge part of this is having your diet optimized, because your brain is made of material, and it is fueled by other kinds of material. And the quality of your memory, which is produced by your brain, is really reliant on whatever it is you feed it, right? Because the material of your brain is made up of, in large part, or influenced by what you eat, and there's a real sensitive balance there. Now, my history with this card, and this is a life-saving card right here, started while I was on the memory journey. I had already been writing books and courses and really helping the world, and it was an astonishing thing one day to stand up from my desk and just my ankle it felt like it was broken. And basically what ended up happening is I went to the doctor and they said I had gout. And a year went past trying to basically figure out what this gout issue was. They never actually found proper evidence of gout after all the specialists went through it. But during that year, they gave me a gout diet. And I started to get fatter and fatter, and in much more pain than I've ever felt in my life, in my joints. And anyway, it turned out to be psoriasis arthritis. And psoriasis is something that I had for a very long time. And it just seems to develop over time in your life. And so I needed to deal with it. And there was no clear path for dealing with that either. And I think that some of the merits of the diet that was given for gout was that I did have ultimately have to say goodbye to alcohol, which I enjoyed a great deal in my university career. And I always loved that memory techniques could help me still remember things, even though I was a bit of a lush here and there. But I was happy to say goodbye to anything that was at the source of this pain. So one of the first things that helped me with getting rid of a lot of brain fog was just getting rid of alcohol, and then all breads, no pasta or anything like that. But the core thing here, and what really matters more than any of the foods that are listed here, is the thinking behind how this list got here. And it's not such a simple story. And so what we need to do is understand why that this helped. and why it was able ultimately, because I wasn't walking for almost 2 months properly, and then I was still in pain for quite a long time in every movement. I had to leave my band that I was playing in because I couldn't play. I was so crippled, and actually my last time on stage was pretty epic because I was in so much pain that I actually threw up. It was the first time I ever threw up in a musical situation with a band when I wasn't really drunk. It wasn't alcohol that was producing the vomit. It was a situation of such excruciating pain that led to that. And I share these things with you candidly because you too might have a life, and life is filled with all kinds of strange and mysterious and twisted adventures, and you don't always know what to do. You don't always know what the problem is. You don't always know what the solution is. And it's just sharing our stories is some way that we can find our solutions. And we don't necessarily have the quickest path, but being able to understand the context is very useful. So I share that with you, not out of any pride or, any reason other than just to give you the context and to understand the consequences of not dealing with pain. Because I would have loved to continue to tour with that band. I would have loved to been able to finish the work that I was doing and contributing to the album and so forth. And it was a real loss because of that pain. But I'm sure glad that I got rid of the pain because I still am able to play music and use my hands in that way and use my memory to remember music as well. And so all things are good. But in any case, what ended up happening is the medical system was just not up and up on the solution. So what I had to do was hire people. And the suggestion there was to think differently about diet, right? And to start by informing myself with data in order that I could think correctly about diet. And then what we would do was something called an elimination diet and then a rotation diet to reintroduce foods. So first you eliminate, then you reintroduce. And so basically what ended up happening is that I went and took that advice, and I got what's called an MRT. And an MRT produced a list of possible food sensitivities. Not 100% accurate. You may see marketing on the internet where they're talking huge promises if you just buy this or that blood test or whatever. You got to take it with a grain of salt. What it's going to do is give you data to better make decisions on what to start eliminating from your diet in order to get at the root cause. In my case, it was severe crippling pain that led to not being able to walk. So I took the advice, and so why I'm telling you that none of these foods matter is because it doesn't matter what I removed from my diet relative to you, because you've got your blood, you've got your skin, and it would be deeply unethical for me to say, yeah, well, if you've got this, then just remove catfish from your diet, right? Like, catfish I never even ate anyway. So it's on here, but it's to recommend it, and it's in the red section rather than the yellow section. But I just removed all of it, right? And some of my favorite foods are on here. But the point is you need to understand the thinking. So what you do is you get a food sensitivities analysis. From what I learned in the medical system that I lived in Germany at the time, they run about 6 tests on your blood. But what this is doing is running like 96 tests on your blood to find all these food sensitivities. And it's not a magic bullet. It's just a data of which foods are most likely causing issues, so you can intelligently remove as many of them as possible. And then when you do the rotation diet, you start to reintroduce foods, and you have a better sense of testing. Now, I understand that a number of people are going to say, no, this is impossible. I will never do this. However, if you really care about solving a problem that might be happening with your joints, in my case, and skin, where it is crippling you, causing pain that makes it very difficult to focus and to learn, and you want to be the best for your family and so forth, well, you might want to consider going through the rigors of getting it sorted and doing an elimination diet. And you can do an elimination diet without this data. This is just a way of speeding up the process and getting some suggestions that are very, very strong and likely indicators of what you might want to remove. And I think it's wise and pertinent to do so. So I don't have any recommendations for particular companies and so forth. I just know that it's called a MRT, and the LEAP program is what I used, and I'm not recommending it or not recommending it. There's many, many things out there. I'm quite happy with the printouts that were provided, and I followed the recommendations, and I ultimately, over time, zeroed in, lasered in, went much, much deeper into the recommendations in order to remove even more things. But I ultimately now walk today, go to the gym usually 3 times a week, and I've become quite strong, and am really, really grateful that I could find within myself the discipline and the wherewithal to put myself through that rigorous, because it is rigorous, but it's worth it, because pain sucks. Pain is one of the #1 sources of forgetfulness, in my opinion, because if you're not paying attention to what's happening in the world, all the memory techniques in the world won't help you, because you need to pay attention first so that you can capture the information, use the memory techniques, get it into long-term memory using more of the memory techniques, and then you're sailing for that knowledge. And yeah, you might make mistakes later with things that you've memorized, but you can correct it using the memory techniques. So I've got oodles of examples of this and little stories I can tell. Just a funny one with Spanish the other day, and I managed to solve it going through the memory palaces and so forth. But we're often not even paying attention to the mistakes if we have physical pain and suffering. So getting rid of physical pain and suffering through diet is really mission critical if you want to be able to have the best possible brain and the best possible success with memory techniques. Though, again, I have to say in full disclosure, these memory techniques worked really well even when I was in that period of pain, and even when I was drinking rather too frequently. So, there's no clear answer here. It's your lifestyle choice, and it's the way that you want to live and the optimization you want to do. And yes, that optimization may take some discipline and some rigor in order to sort out what those foods are. But from my perspective, in terms of brain health and how that affects memory, you owe it to yourself to have the best possible machine going on, especially with the magnetic memory method that's going to encourage you to then get into meditation and memory, and also maybe a little bit of memorizing certain things, like some things from the Vedanta tradition, for example, self-inquiry, so that you are able to be free of the monkey mind. And one of the things that's going to optimize all this, and Gary Weber talks about it in Happiness Beyond Thought, is your diet. Figuring out foods that I think the terms he uses is make you rajasic or tomasic, and these terms basically mean irritable, and these may not be exactly the right terms, because I don't recall memorizing them using memory techniques, because I was just reading it for general interest. But they're related to these moods in Vedanta, or what are called the vasanas. And so certain foods will produce certain kinds of mental states. And if you're caught in those mental states, what's going to end up happening is you're going to not be at your best self. You're not going to be focused, laser, zeroed in on what it is that you could be doing with your life, with your memory, with your focus, with your concentration, and those goals. So it behooves you to understand this process and never try to follow anyone else's diet, but rather craft your own based on a deep understanding of whatever it is that your body is doing, and what it needs to be doing based on where it is right now in the world. This is really, really important. And that's not to be mystical or to restrict information from you. I mean, I'm happy to share this list with you, but it's not the path. The path is to get your own list. It's the same thing we teach in the magnetic memory method is, yeah, you can look at my list of 00 to 99 figures. You can look at all my mnemonic examples, but the path is for you to be able to come up with mnemonic examples like that, because you understand the skill. You understand the methods and the techniques behind it. And quite frankly, I have shared hundreds of examples of my own, but it's not the actual path to getting the skills yourself. Yes, you need some reference material, and there's lots and lots of reference material in the magnetic memory world. And better than that, there's lots and lots of material just around. People are sharing their mnemonic examples like crazy all over the place, but that's also part of the problem. So what we need to understand is the pharmacon principle. And the pharmacon principle is really simple. Every cure contains a poison, and every poison contains a cure. And what we really need to understand in this is to be cautious about these things and seek to understand the foundations. And so the foundations of my diet, and I am going to write a book about this as soon as I can, and it's going to be about how everything I said here, essentially, in book form, a little bit more story, a little more of the science that I've come to understand, references, getting into the proper thinking and so forth, as much as I think that any person could adopt this. to guide your own ship, right? And do it in collaboration with medical professionals where that's appropriate. Always go and make sure you're informed in the best possible way. I've gone to see doctors and nutritionists. The last one I saw was a year ago, just to make sure everything is on the path. Because eliminating all these foods, even though it gets me walking again, there may be a deadline, or not a deadline, but there may be a period of time at which what I'm eating now, it may peter out. I might need to refresh. I might need to reset. I might need to test. And sometimes I do test with foods that are on here that I technically shouldn't eat because of food sensitivities. Because one of the things with my immune disorder that leads to psoriasis, arthritis, is that the body, theoretically, this is all theory, right? The body needs to never get used to the foods that I'm eating in some sense. And that's why the rotation diet is so powerful. And I practice a rotation diet all the time. Whatever I eat on Monday, I never eat again until Thursday, so that there's space between, so that my body never gets accustomed to the food. Because if it does get accustomed to the food, then it starts to attack it. And that's where the psoriasis is eating up the tissue between the joints, or the joint tissue, and whatever other tissues are in there between the joints, and then the joints are starting to grind on each other. That's what's creating the pain, right? And so it's a very sensitive thing. And the way I think of it to help guide the adventure of chronic pain and how it disrupts attention on the present moment when memory techniques could be in play, is I think of it as life is kind of like a boat, and there's wind that can guide your sails in the right direction, there's wind that can guide your sails in the wrong direction, and you need to have the right direction, right? You need to test that the direction is right. And so you can row and row and row all by yourself, and maybe you can put on a fancy motor that makes you go 1,000 miles an hour, but there's a real principle in life, which is, what does it matter if you're going 1,000 miles an hour if you're going 1,000 miles in the wrong direction? John Lee Dumas said that the other day, and it's very, very true. And so how do you avoid getting so that you are, you want to be optimized in life so you can go 1,000 miles an hour, but how do you then make sure that the 1,000 miles an hour you're going is in the right direction? Well, you do it very simply. You understand the principles behind things like an elimination diet and a rotation diet, and then you find out what those foods are for you. And then you avoid those foods, understanding that there may be a time deadline. There may be a time coming when you need to actually change again, right? And then you do a reset. And you just, you don't, again, I started this by saying there's not a magic bullet. It's a strategy of thinking and a tool of guiding you to have the right wind in your sails, so that when things start picking up and humming along and you're going 1,000 miles an hour, it's in the right direction. And that's what you want for your brain, for the lifelong health of your brain and your memory, so that you are like that samurai, always prepared to execute one last move, even with your head cut off. Because I'll tell you, sometimes I make a mistake with eating. I eat something that shouldn't be on there, and I need to have my memory on my side. And it is, no matter what ends up happening. And, sometimes traveling, you get super hungry, break down, eat something. And it's not like junk food I'm talking about. It can be like a potato, because potatoes I can't eat. They cause real problems for me. And that can lead to a long period of suffering. Anyway, it's not like I'm the only person talking about this stuff out there. There's some really interesting stories if you poke around about food sensitivities. And I hope that no matter where you are in your life and what you're doing, that you will hear the integrity of what I'm trying to say in not sharing every little last detail of what I eat, because the meal plan that's going to help you is the one you create for yourself. It doesn't really matter that much what these particular foods are that I'm sensitive to, and it doesn't even really matter to a certain extent what foods are that you could add to improve your memory, because in my case, I can't add walnuts, I can't have blueberries, green tea I react to. And so I can tell you these are the foods that are scientifically known to improve memory, And we've got a great podcast and blog post about that, foods that improve memory, so you can pick out on them if you don't have sensitivities. And I tell you then and there that this is not necessarily my experience with these things, so use it with caution. Because walnuts would be great. From a scientific perspective, we have all the evidence in the world that if I could eat walnuts, my memory would be even better. But I have to have a workaround. And I have to have a workaround that doesn't cause pain. And so, no walnuts? Well, no benefits, no memory boost from walnuts. That's just the way that it is. The most important thing, and I hope that you really understand this, is that it's pain and suffering and brain fog that are getting in between you and your memory being the best memory it can be. Get rid of the pain, get rid of the brain fog, get rid of the foods that make you twitchy and so forth. I talk a lot about digital amnesia. I talk a lot about how the internet is interrupting the brain's progress and so forth in terms of you being able to learn. And there's 100% truth to that. We know that digital amnesia and digital dementia is real, but there's also the food equation. And that is also making people twitchy because they're eating a lot of foods that aren't real. They're eating foods that are filled with poison and toxin. And they might be the healthiest foods in the world, but because of how they were produced, they're garbage, right? And they're causing problems with learning, with concentration, with focus, with being properly sociable, let's say. And that's a problem. And so the only person who can solve that problem is you, in the same way that the only person that could ultimately solve mine was me. And so when you have these problems, look in the mirror first, and I hope that this story I shared today will help you have some decision parameters. Again, I'm going to write a book about this eventually, and I really do hope that it will help people who especially have pain and so forth, but I think it would help anyone, because no matter how healthy you are now, no matter how pain-free you are now, there's going to be a day, perhaps, when you're faced with something that you don't want to be faced with, and I wouldn't wish anybody to be faced with such a thing, but it's reality that sometimes those things land on a human body. But I also think that it behooves every serious, mature learner to take care of these things now and to be preemptive so that you reduce the chances of anything like that happening. And so, again, if any of this helped you, I'd just be delighted if you'd let us know. And if you have any thoughts, comments, rebuttals, arguments you want to make, all we ask is that people don't swear in the comments below. We have to delete that because it's not fair to other people who might be reading those comments. And generally, just use common sense and courtesy, and if you can't do that, then we'll filter it for you. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this video, and as much as I enjoyed making it for you. And if you need some memory training, if you haven't taken the free course at magneticmemorymethod.com, it is something that if your eyes are open and your ears are open and you want to complete a simple exercise to get started with the magnetic memory method, it's very good what happens for people who do that. It unlocks your perspective and it helps you decide whether or not this is something for you. And we're really, really happy to serve the people for whom this is for at magneticmemorymethod.com. So to do that, there's a link down below, or you can type in magneticmemorymethod.com/YT. That's a little acronym for YouTube. And we really, really appreciate the opportunity to help people improve their memory. So let me know in the discussion below if you have any questions about what you think generally, or what it might be that is standing between you and getting one of these, so that you can get it sorted in your life if that's something that you're facing. And we'll talk again real soon. And until then, this has been Anthony Metivier from magneticmemorymethod.com. Keep yourself magnetic.